Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Pursuit of Justice by Diann Mills, narrated by Rebecca Mitchell. Little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet, eating her curds and whey. Along came a spider who sat down beside her and frightened Miss Muffet away. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Matthew, chapter 6, verse 21, New International Version. Chapter 1. The moment Bella accepted the reassignment to the FBI's field office in Houston, she realized the past had stalked her to the present. And she was ready, or at least she told herself so. Her training and experience had sharpened her skills and provided tools to solve crimes the average American deemed unspeakable. Fear and memories had climbed into her luggage for the relocation to Houston, but she resisted their hold. Bella had made the decision to work hard to build her credentials and help curtail the endless barrage of crime, especially in the country's fourth largest city. Her BlackBerry interrupted her thoughts and her drive to work with its rendition of That'll Be the Day. A quick glance showed the caller was Frank. "No way, super agent. I don't have a thing to tell you." She answered on the third ring. "Morning, Frank. What can I do for you? Lunch?" She laughed. "You heard I have an appointment with Schwartzer, and curiosity is killing you." "Me? I wanted to talk about spending the weekend in Galveston." "Right, Frank. We broke up 9 months ago." 9 months, huh? As in giving birth to a new relationship?" She envisioned a slight smile spreading over his face, a good-looking one, but not for her. "No, thanks. Remember, we tried and it didn't work. I don't want to put my heart in that place again. See you later. But bye, Frank." Bella tossed the phone into her purse. Regret over the failed relationship with Frank settled like a day harboring poor air quality. She'd known from the start a relationship with him wouldn't work. He'd wanted a wife who'd stay home and raise kids. She refused to give up the bureau, no matter how much she cared for him. The only thing she'd ever formed a lasting attachment to was the FBI, and mistakes in the name of love were not in her playbook. A promotion had been in her path for the past few months, and she desperately wanted it. Ambition always ruled over her logic, but she didn't view her objectives as selfish. The meeting this morning with her supervisor might be a jump in her career. A coveted opportunity to prove her mettle sounded almost too good to be true, and like a kid at Christmas on this early June morning, she drove toward the field office to see if she had a gift marked promotion. Bella moved into the right lane of 290 to take the feeder road off the highway. For certain, battling traffic at 7 a.m. had hardened her for criminal activity, or destroyed any trace of patience. Her mind raced with anticipation over her meeting with Schwartzer. This meeting could be about a number of ongoing investigations or possibly a new one. No matter. She'd take the assignment and keep climbing the ladder. She swung into the parking lot of the 8-story glass and steel building and stopped in front of the guard shack. After displaying her creds, she eased into the covered parking area and hurried inside. Her heart pounded against her chest, and she sensed the familiar excitement of something new to challenge her. She scanned her badge and keyed in her security code at every door and made her way to the second floor, housing the Violent Crimes Task Force team and the office of Larry Schwartzer, her supervisor. While his secretary informed him of her arrival, Bella took several deep breaths in an effort to settle her nerves and will away the anxiousness, making her feel like a kid sent to the principal's office. Schwartzer opened the door. "Morning, Bella. Come on in." Her heavy shoulder bag shifted and slipped from her arm to the floor. Thank goodness it was zipped. She cringed at the idea of her Glock, handcuffs, and all of her other equipment, not to mention her makeup bag and wallet, dropping at her feet. "Little nervous, are we?" He chuckled, and her confidence fell to somewhere between diffused and lack of. She laughed and hoisted her bag. Add curiosity to the mix. He ushered her into his office, and she took a seat across from his desk. The wall behind him intimidated her with its framed certificates and honors earned over his 20-year career. Most likely his wife refused to have them all displayed at home. Bella attempted to read his face, but Swartzer prided himself in being unreadable, and this morning was no exception. Although short and stocky, her supervisor had the neck and shoulders of a man who must bench nearly 275 pounds. He removed his signature black-framed glasses and turned to retrieve a couple of files from atop his credenza. She hadn't seen him without his glasses. Swartzer's military haircut and polyester pants still made him look nerdish, but then super-intelligent people usually were. Where did that leave her? Shoving aside the bazillion thoughts darting in and out of her mind like mosquitoes over a stagnant pond, she realigned her focus and gave the impression of professional calmness. "I have an assignment for you." He tapped the file and eased back in the chair that was made for a much taller man, at least physically. "What kind?" "Murder. 3 bodies were found Monday afternoon on a ranch in West Texas." His calculated gaze met hers. 60 miles south of Abilene." He had her attention, and he knew it. "Runnels County?" "Ballinger area." She nodded and forced aside the implications of what the location meant to her. "Why the FBI?" "It's linked to a man on our fugitive list." Suspicion flared, and she opened the file, complete with photos of the victims. She pressed her fingertips into her palms. "Who?" But she already knew the answer. "Brant Richardson." "Murder for hire." She stated the fact while memories in apocalyptic proportions slammed against her mind. Also obsessed with finding the so-called Spider Rock treasure. "The victims were hunting for this treasure and believed their clues led them to the High Butte Ranch, owned by Carr Sullivan. They sought permission to dig, and he refused. Ran them off. One of the victims wrote Spider Rock in the dirt before he died." Runnels County doesn't fall within the triangle of where the gold was supposedly hidden. "You know more about it than I do." "What were the victims' names?" "Forrest Miller, a history professor at the University of Texas. Daniel Kegley, a geologist from Austin. And Walt Higgins, a retired oilman from Waco." She didn't recognize any of them. "Family?" "Miller has a wife and 3 teenage girls. Kegley was engaged, and Higgins has been divorced for over 30 years. No ties there. The families have all been interviewed. Professor Miller's wife said a 4th man was in the mix, but that's all she knew. Nothing else at this point." Swartzer slipped on his glasses and steepled his fingers. "You know why I want you on the assignment. Or would you rather I brief Frank Nilsson?" Not on her life. Both of them were up for the same promotion. "I'll take it." "I thought you'd accept. The updated report has been sent to your email. I've also arranged for you to have access to classified files this morning and anything else you need. Here's the bite. The ranch owner and a man who works for him found the victims. Sullivan phoned the local deputy sheriff and reported the bodies. When Sullivan learned their names, he told the sheriff about his conversation with one of the men. Said the 3 wanted to dig for treasure and he refused. When the Spider Rock legend came into the discussion, the FBI became involved. Richardson is out there somewhere with his own treasure hunting expedition, and murder is one of his specialties." "Any idea who's working with him?" Bella turned the pages in the file, ignored Brant's latest photo, and read his vital information. "He's been quite successful at staying undercover." "The classified information will help you there. 12 years ago, he left the area for Peru with a woman. She's never resurfaced. He probably got tired of her." Swartzer leaned over his desk. "You know how these people in West Texas think, and I imagine you know the superstitions surrounding the legend. Richardson won't stop searching and killing for the treasure until someone clamps handcuffs on him." Dread filled her, while memories from the past threatened to paralyze her, but she refused to show it. She took a deep breath, one meant to clear her thoughts and help her think like a special agent, not a woman who swore she'd never set foot in Runnels County again. I have a difficult time believing anyone would spend their lives looking for lost treasure. If the 3 victims believed the gold was on Sullivan's ranch, his refusal wouldn't have stopped them, she said. By him denying the men access, they'd believe he was searching for the treasure too, and it would have spurred on their efforts, even caused them to dig at night. And your knowledge of the area makes you the best agent for the investigation. I appreciate your giving me this opportunity, sir. Since this is in Dallas's territory, they will furnish you with what you need. There's also a satellite office in Abilene. But keep me informed. I'd rather use one of our analysts, since I have a rapport with them. No problem. Finding the killer would end the nightmares for those families whose loved ones he'd killed and terrorized. If the killer happened to be Brant Richardson, then that was an added bonus for all concerned. Sullivan is also under suspicion for the murders. Richardson may not even be involved with these killings in light of Sullivan's ordering the 3 to stay off his property. Additional investigation shows the bullets found in the bodies came from a Ruger Mini-14 rifle. One is registered to Sullivan, and it's missing. He claims it was stolen, but he hadn't reported it. And he has an alibi for the estimated time of death. She turned to another section in the file. Carr Sullivan, former real estate developer, Dallas, Texas. He had blonde hair and deep blue eyes. A pleasant-looking man, but not a lady killer. Tell me more about the rancher. The man has a history of violent behavior. He used to be a high roller in Dallas. Made his money in commercial real estate. Drugs, alcohol, and being known for his wild parties, along with a propensity to fight. Quite a colorful reputation. He spent a fortune in rehabs, but it never lasted. Then when his girlfriend OD'd about 5 years ago, he sold his business and bought a ranch in West Texas. Since then, he's settled down. So the girlfriend's death scared him into going straight? The word is he got religion. Which one? Found Jesus. Claims he's born again. She stashed that info away for later reflection. How does he spend his time? He's turned himself into a rancher and a respected member of the community. Done all the right things to alter his former reputation. His latest project is turning his ranch into a home for at-risk teen boys. He's already applied for the licenses. A real Boy Scout, huh? She peered into Swartzer's face. Couldn't tell if he thought the change in Sullivan was legit or not. Sullivan's past wheeling and dealing in Dallas fits the M.O. of a man obsessed with finding a lost treasure and potentially hooking up with Richardson. I see. She closed the file. Sullivan could be working with Richardson. Manipulated sounded more like Richardson's method. You're a good agent, Bella. You've demonstrated your commitment to the Bureau with an impeccable record. All of your investigations have been conducted professionally and with excellent results. You lived there for 15 years. Need I say more? I appreciate your confidence in my skills and experience. Then I'm assigning you as lead agent in this investigation to help solve these murders and possibly the opportunity to arrest Brant Richardson. Her pulse raced. At last, an opportunity to prove her training and determination. I don't know what to say except thank you. I'll not disappoint you. Bella couldn't stop the smile. When do I leave? I'd like to see you on the road by lunchtime. Reservations have been made at the Courtesy Inn in Abilene near Highway 83, the same hotel where the victims stayed. Special Agent Vic Anderson from Dallas will meet you at your hotel at 9 in the morning. Thank you again. Bella couldn't get to her computer fast enough to review all the reports on the murders and Brant Richardson. If you find yourself in over your head, don't hesitate to contact me. He gave her a tight-lipped smile. Go for it. Chapter 2. Carr tossed his pillow across the room. He gave up on sleeping. He'd tried everything but counting sheep, and nothing had slowed down his mind. Not even prayer. Anger, the old demon that too often wrapped its chains around him, threatened to seize control of him. Over 5 years had come and gone since he'd imprisoned the dragon. and he refused to release the animal again. Throwing back the sweat-drenched sheet, he made his way across the wooden floor, down the hall, and into the kitchen for a bottle of cold water. Green numbers flashed 2:47 on the microwave above the oven. Hours before daylight. Hours before the county sheriff's department planted themselves at his front door again. Hours before anyone might possibly have answers about the 3 murdered men found on his property and shot with his rifle. The past 2 days and the investigation had added years to his life and wrinkles to his face. A little sleep would have been nice. He'd never seen dead men before, except at funerals, and Carr didn't dwell on a body in a casket. The horror of finding those 3 victims continued to replay in his mind. He recalled the soaring vultures, the awkward positions of the bodies, the dried blood, the vacant eyes, and the realization that the act was deliberate. He'd have preferred a nightmare that could have been shaken off with a dose of reality. Stupid, stupid, stupid! Only an idiot failed to report a missing rifle. If he hadn't been negligent, all of this could have been avoided, and maybe those 3 men would be walking around and enjoying life now, instead of waiting for a proper burial. Carr could have been arrested for those murders. Still might be. Evidence stacked against him to the point he wondered why he hadn't been charged. He thanked God he hadn't been. As he reached into the refrigerator for the water, the pungent scent of jalapenos and cilantro met his nostrils. Normally, Lydia's cooking left his mouth watering long after the food disappeared, but tonight had merely been an extension of the miserable day. And just like the sleep that escaped him, so did his appetite. He uncapped the bottle and drank deeply, the cold rush springing life into his weary body. Sweat beaded on his brow and dripped into his eyes. If he didn't know better, he'd swear high blood pressure and a fever had invaded him. A drug would solve a medical problem, certainly not the kind he used to ingest to eliminate stress and help him appear charming. Thank goodness the past and all of its imprints didn't contain murder. But he'd come close, as the police records about his fiery temper indicated. With his new life, one dedicated to Christ, he'd hoped he would be immune to tragedy. Shouldn't following God provide some kind of special protection? Why would God do this to him? Whoa! Carr reined in his thoughts. God had not stolen his rifle. Neither had he pulled the trigger, killing those men. Someone made a conscious choice to steal and murder. None of those choices were a part of God's plan. Yet nothing looked likely to clear him of this atrocity. He clenched his fist and forced down the gut-punching fury, the unfairness of the whole mess. The authorities probably had their hands on his background and were searching for ways to nail him. If he were investigating the murders, he'd be doing the same thing. He looked guilty to anyone who viewed the colorful habits he had supposedly left behind. The timing of all of this. Rotten, lousy timing. But did a man schedule 3 murders on his land like a businessman recorded dates and appointments on his BlackBerry? What season of the year best fit that kind of disaster? Carr moaned in the darkness, once more feeling the impact of what had happened on his ranch, his haven from the cruelty of the world. Acid burned in his stomach. Where was his compassion for others? What about those men's families? Did they have anyone to comfort them? Should he step forward to offer sympathy, or would that make him look guilty? Recapping his bottle of water, he dragged his hand over his damp face. Focus, Carr. God had gotten him through bad times before, and he would again. All he had to do was crawl into the little red wagon labeled Radio Flyer and let God pull him along. Carr, you don't have to face this alone, a sweet, older voice said with a slight Hispanic accent. He nodded in the dark, more an acknowledgement of Lydia's presence than an agreement with her words. You and Jasper had my back. But we weren't the ones falsely accused. Tell that to the county sheriff's department, since they need someone to arrest. The media has me judged and convicted. My own fault, Lydia. I discovered my rifle was missing about a week ago. but I didn't take the time to report it." He blew out his frustration in a sigh that sounded more like a hiss. "Darren and I have been friends since I moved here, and there's no excuse. He's the sheriff and deserved to know about the theft. Actually, I thought maybe Jasper had borrowed it, but he'd never opened my gun case without asking." "Obviously you're innocent, and Sheriff Adams thinks so too." "I keep telling myself if they had found credible evidence, I'd be sitting in jail. Then again, it doesn't matter, since they're coming back this morning." "To search for more evidence?" "Yes, and to question all of us again, as if we were involved in some conspiracy to cover up the killings. I'd never heard of the Spider Rock treasure, a stupid legend that seemed important enough for one of the men to write it in the dirt before he died. I shouldn't have—" "What?" Lydia's soft voice had a calming effect on him, even when the woman raised it a notch with an air of wisdom and superiority. "I threatened one of them. The geologist," Carr said. "He called me from a bar or a restaurant in Abilene. I could hear the music and people in the background. When he asked again for my permission to dig, I told him if I found any of them on my land, they'd be run off with buckshot in their rears." Lydia snapped on a light over the sink. Like him, she still wore the clothes from the night before. The dim fluorescent bulb made him blink. "Did you tell Sheriff Adams about the second call?" "No. And Sunday night, Miller made a third one. Now I'm wondering if my withholding information is grounds to arrest me. I'm an idiot, so wrapped up in my own little world that I failed to take responsible action. I never met any of those poor men, and they turned up dead on my ranch." "Men have died since the 1700s in search of the Spider Rock gold. And I can't believe these murders are about a treasure hunt. It's buried out here in this part of the country, somewhere. But no one has ever been able to find anything but more clues and Spanish artifacts." She smiled, and he saw the beauty of lost youth still in her eyes. Dark hair and dark eyes with smooth, latte-colored skin. But it was her faith that endeared her to him the most. As the light above the sink slowly grew brighter, it intensified the gold cross around her neck. "It's real, Carr. That's why those men were murdered." "I have no reason to think otherwise." Carr bit back his opinion of how ludicrous it sounded for a cache of lost Spanish gold to be buried in this part of the country, like someone believing Nicolas Cage's claims in national treasure. "I understand." Her motherly instincts reached out to him, and for those qualities, he couldn't fault her for believing in a legend. Once more he uncapped the bottle and took another long swallow of water. "If the victims had been illegals, maybe I could make some sense of all this. Blame gang warfare or a drug cartel. Doesn't matter that I don't believe in the treasure theory. They did. The only thing I can figure out is greed led them here. And greed killed them." He stared into Lydia's tanned face. "And whoever wanted them dead used my weapon." "I don't understand who could have broken in and taken your rifle. Someone is here most of the time. The doors are kept locked, and—" She took in a deep breath. "I refuse to think the thief, the killer, is someone we know." "Me either, unless the rifle was stolen while we were at church. In the meantime, I'm trying to figure out if I need a lawyer or a shrink, because this is driving me nuts. We were all ready to turn the High Butte into a home for at-risk teen boys. Wish I could calm down. Relax. But I'm angry. My future is in the gutter, which means the home for at-risk boys is at best on hold. We must trust God. You were sure He wanted this to be a haven for them just as it was for you. You have all the credentials and licenses and everything." Guilt pelted him for not being able to stop the anger eating at his soul. "I'm feeling sorry for myself. Actually, I'm worried. Not only did someone want those 3 guys killed, they wanted me blamed. Smart person. Too smart for my liking." He leaned on the kitchen counter. "I made enemies in my day, men and women who despised me, but I don't recall anyone who'd frame me for murder." "Are you praying?" Like breathing. God's probably tired of me pounding on his door. I don't think so. I'll brew a pot of decaf, and we'll pray together. Since he was fresh out of options, he reached for his worn Bible on the counter. I heard Darren say the FBI has been called in on the investigation. She pulled the coffee beans from the cupboard and dumped a generous amount into the grinder. I don't know what justifies an FBI investigation. What did Sheriff Adams say? There's a man on their fugitive list who's wanted for murder for hire and has been searching for the Spider Rock treasure. Darren had told him more, even given Carr the fugitive's name, but Carr had been too overwhelmed with what was happening to ask questions. First, he had to get past the repulsion of what he and Jasper had discovered. At least his temper was beginning to subside. When will the FBI be here? Lydia poured water into the coffee maker. Tomorrow. He glanced down at his Bible, and then into her sweet face. I'm scared. Real scared. While driving to Abilene, Bella considered the investigative reports about the murders. Most of the information concerning Brant Richardson's involvement with the Spider Rock treasure, subsequent murders, and embezzled money had been declassified, and the names of potential suspects were now stored on her laptop and BlackBerry. One of the men was listed in Forbes. Another man held the office of U.S. Senator, and another was a professor at the University of Texas, a friend of the professor who had lost his life. Two others were prominent businessmen affiliated with both government and private sector enterprises. All of the men must have been convinced of the authenticity of the Spider Rock treasure, which wasn't illegal. Murder, on the other hand, had all of them on the FBI's radar. Since her briefing this morning, she'd attempted to put together the pieces about Brant's possible involvement. She'd seen him in action, and he was more than capable. His Apollo-looking features had thrilled her until she saw the evil lurking below the surface. His weaknesses were money and women, with an unyielding desire to find the Spider Rock treasure. His strengths were his charisma and the mind that never shut down. It simply spun new webs. Carr Sullivan's background fit easily into the treasure hunter's picture. The rancher had all the characteristics of someone in cahoots with Brant Richardson, someone who'd do whatever it took to find the hidden cache of gold. But she also understood Brant's tactics. Although the rancher had a history with Dallas police due to his partying days and temper problems, and his rifle had fired the bullets that killed the three men, she couldn't discount Brant's ability to orchestrate the shootings and place the blame on an innocent man. Bella had learned a long time ago that murder brought in an interesting cast of players, and not all were guilty. Pulling her BlackBerry from her shoulder bag, she phoned FIG, the Field Intelligence Group at the Houston field office, to request complete reports on the high-profile businessmen. Sullivan's former days in Dallas could have put him in contact with any of them. Even Brant Richardson. She fixed her attention on the trail of lawlessness Brant had left behind him. Her conscience niggled at her. Protocol required she state her past association with Brant, even if she was only 15 years old at the time. But she hadn't, because she couldn't. Yesteryear floated like a vapory figure too real to be cast aside. 14 years later, and the mention of the man's name still sent a coil of fear up her spine. Too many times today she'd second-guessed the wisdom in taking on this assignment. She could have recommended Frank and eliminated the heartburn and queasiness this investigation would generate. For that matter, she and Frank could have worked this together with Special Agent Vic Anderson from the Dallas field office. Except Frank would want to reignite their love affair, and she had no intentions of putting herself under that pressure. Not that he wasn't a capable agent. He had the qualifications and intellect to figure out how a twisted man's mind worked. The two worked well together. His confidence would have compensated for her personal fears of Brant. But she'd chosen a different path, and she would plod ahead to find a way to deal with years that were best forgotten. The thrill of arresting an FBI fugitive was worth keeping her eyes glued to her back.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?